County government. I'm familiar with how our county government works. I served on the Calaveras County Grand Jury, and I was very honored that I was asked to hold over a second year and serve as their foreman. As you can see, I have deep, deep roots in both communities. I think it's difficult to find that in a supervisor. So each group, each community is represented equally and fairly. And I believe that I have the experience to do that. I've been in the trenches for most of my adult life, and I know what these communities need. And I'm not doing that because I'm running for supervisor, but because I love Calaveras County and I love the communities that I'm part of. My values are personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and just being a good citizen. I believe a supervisor should tell the truth, obey the law, and listen to the people. I believe that we should be fair and consistent in our decision making, and that we should be prepared to vote. So we vote fairly for all the citizens. Thank you.
Mr. Cook. I'm Gary Topanelli. I'm running for supervisor in District 1. I've lived in Calaveras County for 16 years. My family roots, the Topanelli family roots, are actually in Amador County. My grandfather was chief of police there in the 50s and the 60s, a period of about 20 years. My parents lived there. I wasn't actually born there. I was born in Sacramento, but we moved back and forth. I did spend my teen years in Stockton. We moved back up here after I started my business in Stockton. Originally, I worked 21 years for a steel fabrication company. I worked from the bottom up. I started at the very bottom of it. I worked up till I ran the plant, about 250 people. After doing that running the plant for 5 years, I decided that I'd had enough with 250 people that I'd start my own business. I kept my business small. It was designed, my original plan, my business plan that I filed and started with, we were going to expand to no more than 10 employees. I've been very lucky because I've kept that number down. I've kept it down to about currently 5 or 6 employees, but we've been very successful during that time. I belong to a union, Ironworkers Union Local 378. My company belongs to that. When I go out and erect steel, I can bring in people from the hall. It's designed for that. And then when we get done with the project, I lay them off. I've also been involved in my homeowners association for the last 16 years since we moved up here. I've either been manager, assistant manager, or financial secretary of that association. I've been involved in resurfacing roads up there, taking care of the culverts. I've had calls in the middle of the night that Joe's septic tank is flowing down the middle of my property. I can't go to sleep, it stinks. I have a lake after it's rained. I have a lake on my property and it wasn't designed for that. You need to clear the culverts out. So I'm very familiar with dealing with people and those type of things for the last 16 years. I also love Calaveras County. I have all of my shirts that I wear and had printed for this campaign. On the very front part, on the left-hand side, says, "I love Calaveras County" on it. I've also campaigned to be very open. Every one of my business cards and every one of my brochures have my home phone number printed on it. And that's for anybody that wants to ask any questions that picks up my brochure at any time during my campaign. I'm very open. Anytime you can call me. And after the campaign, when I'm elected, keep my cards. My phone number's on there. You can call me anytime for anything. I'll be happy to help you. I also believe that this position that I'm asking you to vote for me for is a full-time job. I'm going to step down from my company's position and give my full time to this position. My son will take over in my place. He's been in training for it for the last 13, 14 years since he graduated from high school. I think in a county with a medium income, average income is $40,000 in that area, and the pay for this position is $48,000, plus you get for a car, allowances for a car, and you also get the benefits. The total package is over $60,000. I think citizens should demand that is a full-time job, and I plan to treat it as a full-time job. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please? The question was that the San Andreas Sanitary District is not being allowed by the state to accept any more hookups until there are a lot of upgrades to their system. And then the question is, what about our new jail? And what is your approach to that?
Well, I know the new jail, the land is secured for it. I believe the funds are already there, not included the funds for the bond that we voted on and accepted, and then the state funds that the sheriff is trying to get. But I do believe that some of that money that's earmarked for the jail out of that bond is going to be going to upgrading the sewer district in order to accept the 245th jail. So I think the funds are already there. That was already earmarked. They knew that going in. The San Andreas sewer can't accept any more hookups. I think if that's the case and the funds are there to do that, the expansion of it, that it needs to be expanded further than not just the jail to allow for future growth in the area. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you know, the situation kind of reminds me about when I was a teenager and my father owned a gas station. I thought it'd be wonderful because I wouldn't have to pay for my gasoline. Well, no, the jail's going to have to pay, as we said, its fair share of those hookups. It's in the budget, it's part of it. When you look at a construction loan of any size, whether it's for a single-family dwelling or for something the magnitude of the jail, you can't just look at it and say, okay, we're going to build a building, and it's going to house X number of people, and then not consider how we're going to hook it up to the existing sewer system. So the money is in the budget. The bigger question is, how are we going to address this problem with the infrastructure? It's absolutely critical that we look towards bringing a revenue stream into Calaveras County so that we can pay for expanded sewer hookups. People want to live here for the same reason we do. And within reason, we should have that sort of growth in mind. I've lived in areas of unbridled growth. We don't want that, but we need the infrastructure to support increases in housing and increases in small businesses. One of the reasons that I decided to run was there was an article a while back in the Calaveras Enterprise about Mr. Gilliam and the upholstery shop that he owns right down here, and his frustrations with this one sink, one toilet, one man shop, and the fees that he had to pay for water and sewer. It's absurd. So we need to look towards encouraging businesses to come in, taking care of those businesses that are here, so that we can expand the revenue stream and deal with the problems of the infrastructure so that none of our toilets back up into our bathtub.
Next question, we'll start with Mr. Toffanelli. How will you promote open, honest, and transparent government in the county?
Well, to begin with, like I said, all my business cards and all my brochures have my home phone number on them. I think that's the beginning right there. Is you have to be accessible as a supervisor to all the constituents that are in your district. That's the beginning of it. I believe that we do have some problems in our departments over there when people off the street, Calaveras County residents, go in and want to find something or get something done that is supposed to be accessible to them, but they run into roadblocks. I think as a supervisor that I would definitely I would have control of most of those departments. Some of the elected ones I would not have a whole lot of control over, but the ones that I do have control over, I would demand that those department heads have full access to all their people that come in and want to have anything that they're looking for given to them. But again, I think it begins with accessibility to the supervisor and being able to have him or her return your phone calls or come to your functions and meet with them and hear your concerns and be able to deal with them and make things that are available to you that you're asking for. Thank you.
Ms. Messenger?
Well, my number's in the book. It always has been, and as far as I know, I'm the only Mazzaferro listed in Calaveras County. It's moved around a little bit because I did live in Valley Springs, I lived in Angels Camp, and I moved back to San Andreas over a year ago when I sold the house in Angels Camp and downsized because I've got 2 girls in college and didn't need that big of a mortgage. Absolutely, the most important thing is you've got to be out there amongst the people. You can't give the impression that you're in an ivory tower. As I alluded to in my opening statement, going out to public functions is one of the things I love to do. That's the other reason I sold the house. Why should I have a mortgage when I'm never home? I love going out and being with people, talking to them, hearing their concerns. I think it's one of the things I've enjoyed the most since I announced that I was a candidate. You wouldn't believe the stories that you hear and the things that people are willing to share with you. And it's just awesome, so long as you always maintain their trust. They have to know that if they bring a story to you or a problem to you, that you're going to honor their trust and that the story won't go any further than you while you try to help them sort through it. Because that's part of being accessible. Knowing that it's not going to go running to somebody else and then turn around and find them the subject of retribution. You have to have the number in the book. You have to be out there talking to people. You have to be an active participant in this county. And that's why I'm running. Because for the last 10 years, that's exactly what I have been doing. And I view this as my opportunity to bring all of the wisdom that I've learned from serving beside all of the people in Calaveras County for the last 10 years into one central focus. And bringing what I've learned in the construction industry into a laser beam so that we can start burning out some of the things that aren't working and get it straightened out. So when this economy turns around, Calaveras County is ready to move forward.
I love this question because this is a comfort zone for me. My phone number is also in the book, and in my travels in the last month or more of going to households, I've been to over 600 homes, and people on my behalf have been to several hundred more. But being accessible is the key, and building relationships is the key. I'm still working on it, but I've been to just about every public agency that we have in District 1. And my purpose is to build relationships, to build trust, so people feel comfortable talking with me. In my first years on the school board, that was one of the things, one of my missions was to build trust with employees, because I wanted the truth. I wanted them to tell me the truth, and it's not always easy to feel like you can talk to a board member and tell them the truth. But I feel like I've accomplished that in my job as trustee of Calaveras Unified School District. Another way to have transparency also is to encourage the public to participate. I've been, like I said earlier, I've been in the trenches for so long with the public, as a public person, working to try and have this transparency. I made a comment last week that what I think is really important too is to have all of the public documents that are available on the internet. There's nothing should be hidden. Everything is in the public domain.
And it should be accessible. This would also help the planning department so they don't have to take time out of their jobs to help people get documents. But I think that it's your personality that kind of fosters that kind of public trust, I hope. And being open yourself is part of getting people to feel comfortable with you. And as I said before, this is part of who I am and what I believe in and what I've actually been practicing the last many years before I even thought of being in this race. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Kathy Mazzaferro. There are about 7 required elements in a county general plan. Which one or two of those elements are the most important to Calaveras County?
Well, the first one is citizen input. If you're going to have a successful general plan, you need to make sure that the citizens are aware of it and they're fully involved and engaged. Because this isn't my vision, it's not Zeryl's, it's not Gary's, it's the communities, it's the counties. So certainly citizen involvement and engagement, that's the first thing. Understanding what our vision is for Calaveras County, and more specifically understanding what our vision is for the district. I've said before, there's no reason for San Andreas to be Valley Springs or Valley Springs to be a suburb of San Andreas. They're two distinctly separate communities with their own identities, and the citizens of those communities have their own ideas of what businesses they would welcome and how they want to see it move forward and grow. So certainly having citizen engagement and having a vision for what that community is. Working on the infrastructure. How do we get the revenue stream? Endless details, which is something most bankers are pretty good at, is working on the endless details of any given transaction. That's what I think the most 2 important elements are on that general plan, is where are our citizens and how do they want to move Calaveras County forward. I'm going to stop pushing that at you.
I like this one.
Okay.
I think one of the most important elements that we need to concentrate on is the housing element. Because the housing element in Calaveras County hasn't been followed. And we need to have housing for every income level to build a workforce. This is part of our economic development. Part of the economic development is to have a workforce that can fill the jobs. But the housing element is inadequate, and what we have had in the past we haven't followed. It requires that we have affordable housing, and we just have ignored it for some reason. Other elements are that people care about are the conservation element. There's a great possibility in Calaveras County to implement these conservation measures, and I think with energy prices going up the way they are, that we really need to focus on finding ways to conserve. Our economic element is very important. This will be a new element. Our agricultural element, this will be a new element. So that will bring it to more than 7. But we need to really focus on what these elements are and what they mean and how important they are to the people of Calaveras County and to the future of Calaveras County. We need to, again, I kind of push this idea of vision, but that's how I live my life. I have to be visioning all the time, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're in the mess we are in terms of our infrastructure here in Calaveras County, is because of a lack of vision, a lack of planning. So, that's it.
You know, one of the things that, one of the mission statement of this county, if you go on the internet or you look at any of your documents that states the mission on this county, it says to provide infrastructure. And when I travel around, I talk to people, and I go on door to door, and I'm going to functions, all I hear is we don't have any infrastructure. So it's just something to think about. If that's the mission of this county, then the people that have been voted into office over the past years have failed in that mission. And I think it's one thing that I can help provide for. I have a construction background. I know how to get things done in my business. I'm in construction. I know how to get that type of things done. As far as the two important elements in this general plan, I think one of the first things that you need to know that's very important, it is up right now, that the draft was finished and it's going to be coming up for vote, is the baseline elements. You have to know at any plan where you're at, and the baseline is a window into exactly where the county is right now. So any trip that you take, any plan that you make, you have to know where you're starting from. So I think that's one of the very basic, important elements in this general plan update. I also think the economic development portion of it is one of the most important things this county can have in it. And it has to be well written, because it is going to be a general plan that's supposed to be followed over the course of the next 20 years. I don't think it's been followed very well, or we wouldn't be facing a $2.3 million deficit. We wouldn't be saying, what about big box stores? We wouldn't be saying we need retail here. We wouldn't be saying we need jobs here. We wouldn't be seeing 38% of our workforce leaving this county to go to work in other counties. Economic development is next to me one of the next important things in this plan. Thank you.
Next question, we'll begin with Zero McDaniel. What would you do to reduce the turmoil in the Community Development Agency?
Well, what has been can't go on, and it has been changed. We have had some change there, and I think it's important to continue with this change. Who's responsible? Well, I think there's enough to go around, but what is the point? How productive is it to blame at this point? What we need to do is sit down, roll up our sleeves, and move forward with I'm going to say that word again, a plan. I think we have a lot of hard-working people who work for county government and in that department also. And change is hard. Nobody likes change. I don't like change all the time. But change can be exciting, and change can make things better. Going back to the transparency, things have to be transparent. The citizens of Calaveras County have to believe, they have to know that their county officials are working in their best interest, that they're working in the public interest. And I believe that we can move forward, we can make a difference. There are things that I believe that need to be done, and need to be done right away. And one of the things is our fees. Now, a fee schedule has been presented. It hasn't been adopted yet. But we need to have the fees that actually cover the cost of development. We recently learned from the CDE that we're subsidizing growth to the point of $1.2 million a year. Now, how far would that go to help with our county budget year after year after year? We also need to get ordinances in place so development can move forward. So developers are clear in what's expected of them. There's no reason why a developer should have to be 1 to 10 years in the planning department to get a development through. If it's a good development and the public is brought in the beginning, so we don't have the acrimony that goes on, so the public can be part of the process. That's I have a lot of ideas on this, and I don't have time to go into them, but that's a few things that I think will help our planning department. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Can you repeat the question, Buzz?
How would you do, what would you do to reduce the turmoil in the Community Development Agency?
Well, I have a little bit of an edge here because I'm in construction, and I know how things should work when it goes through there at planning department. One of the first things I would do is I would get a very active planning commissioner that had experience in planning and also in the construction departments to help move through some of the developments and some of the projects that go through there. The other thing I would do I would develop an economic development board or agency that's either funded by the county or part of the county or at least under the CAO's umbrella. And that agency or department would develop certain criteria to which a project that came forward or through, such as a commercial project that said that they would like to move to this county and they would provide 50 jobs or 60 jobs to people within the community, that if they met certain criteria like the minimum wage would be a living wage of at least $12, $13, $14 an hour. That would be a starting wage, and the wages would go up from there. They would maintain that job level for a minimum of 5 years. That in the building that they're planning to build meets certain criteria. That would be put on what's in other counties called fast track permitting. If they meet all of that criteria and they sign a contract with the county, then their permit would be issued within 60 days. It would be fast-tracked through the Planning Commission, through the Planning Department, permits issued, so the construction can begin and the jobs can start. That's ultimately what the Planning Commission or the Planning Department is all about, to get the construction going. Thank you.
Buzz, would you read that question one more time?
What would you do to reduce the turmoil in the Community Development Agency?
We need to clean house. We need to specifically go from the department head on down and address who's running Calaveras County. We need to clean house. We need to go back and make sure that those people in any position of authority know what they're doing, understand what they're interpreting. I've been working in construction lending, both consumer and commercial, in Calaveras County for the last 10 years. I've worked with the contractors, the developers, the architects, the engineers, and the people who just want to build a home. And I can tell you, I have never seen more frustrated people who just want to get their septic tank approved than I have seen in the last 3 years. Every time I turn around, I have a new poster child for why I'm running. The most recent one was a young man I met out in Copperopolis not long ago. He just wanted to build a swimming pool in the backyard of the home that he built. So he went to the county and he followed all the rules. He got the permits, they came out, they surveyed, they excavated. The county came out and they approved it. You can move on. So he moved to the next phase. And the county came out and they approved it. And so the process continued until the very last phase, when he wanted to just put the final sealer on it and fill it, and they came out and red tagged his $35,000 pool. Because now they've decided, oh dear, we think it might be too far in the encroachment. We need people who know what they're doing. We have a lot of hardworking people in that department, and they've been there for years. And I can't imagine how demoralized, how discouraged, and how much they don't look forward to going to work right now. Because when they tell a customer something at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're countermanded and have to tell them something completely different at 2 o'clock. What would I do with the CDA? I'd clean house and I'd start from the top.
Let's take a 5-minute break and then give everybody a stretch. Calaveras High School Band has provided us with refreshments over here, so please take advantage of it.
Yeah, please support the high school band. They work very hard, and
I was calling it Tuffinelli earlier. Tuffinelli. Let me get away with it. What do you propose to do about the four-way stop in Valley Springs where traffic backs up for more than 15 minutes each morning?
You know, this question came up the other night at Valley Springs, the one that Nick Baptista put on. And it was discussed about a bypass, where a bypass would go. There's some land that's been, the owner that I had talked to had proposed to put a bypass through there and put a shopping center through there off of Highway 12 to bypass through there. And Highway 12 is what's called a primary highway, and dealing with Caltrans and a lot of primary highways, it takes quite a while to get the process through. It could take many years, even though the land's deeded to the county and deeded to Caltrans, the easements and things. It's very difficult to do. Not to say that it's impossible, because it certainly isn't. Things are done all the time. They're doing bypass over there at Angels right now. Highway 26 is what they call a secondary highway. And so a bypass was talked about through New Hogan down to Lime Creek and that way. It would probably get through a lot faster going that way. So I would work towards either the bypass avenue way of doing it, or, you know, other than those two things, I'd hate to see a stoplight there. Stoplights a lot of times don't help traffic in those situations. They kind of make things even worse. Other than putting a traffic guard there, the old guy with a whistle out there and a hat and blowing a whistle and whistling you through and stop and all this stuff, the bypass seems to be the thing to go, and I would try and promote that the best that I could. Thank you.
Well, I lived in Valley Springs from 201 to 204, so I'm personally acquainted with how frustrating that intersection is. It always fascinated me that from about 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock, it was just a standstill. And then all of a sudden, everybody just kind of goes whoosh and disappears, and the buses are through. But most definitely, I would support a bypass. I attended a number of meetings when I lived in Valley Springs that involved the Valley Springs Area Business Association and Caltrans. Caltrans is going to be the biggest challenge. If ever there was a government agency known for taking their own sweet time, it's Caltrans. Certainly I would promote, I'd push, I'd nag, I'd do whatever I could, but those of you who have dealt with Caltrans know they don't move very swiftly, and they're not swayed by public sentiment. My support would be for the bypass, and you know, you just push them along as best you can.
Some years ago, the Council of Governments had 3 bypasses on their agenda. One was in Angels Camp, one was in Valley Springs, and one was right here in San Andreas. Somehow the San Andreas and the Valley Springs bypass just kind of went poof and disappeared. We're not sure why. I think putting a stoplight at that 4-way stop would completely destroy the historic culture of that area. There are studies shown that actually the way it is now with a 4-way stop moves traffic faster than if we had a stoplight. I would be in favor of advocating for and working hard to get a bypass, or at least a better road that, for the time being, going from on the Lime Creek from Highway 26 to Highway 12. And the reason I think that would be the best is because most of the traffic in the morning, if you haven't experienced that, it's backed up, and if you're trying to get into the shopping center or otherwise, you might as well just park there. But most of that traffic are school buses in the morning, kids going to school, driving, workers going to work at the government center, the hospital, the DMV, whatever other places there are to work. So that would be the best solution, and it's going to take some work to do that, but I think it's worth the effort. Putting in a stoplight would not only cost close to $800,000, which from what I understand, but it would be less effective than what we have now.
The next question is, we'll start with Ms. Mazzacaro. And this is a little long, but it's well written. I'd like to read the whole thing. We live in an area of San Andreas where most of the homes are valued between $350,000 and $500,000. That's not my neighborhood. At last appraisal, our home was valued at the upper end of the scale. The problem, my neighbors have pigs in their backyard, which is about 20 feet from my bedroom, and the smell of the pig manure is overwhelming. At this time, there's no ordinance restricting the raising of pigs. There's nothing animal control can do unless all of the neighbors complain that it is a nuisance. It goes on about CC and Rs. Basic question is, if you were elected, how would you address an issue like that? Is that urban-rural interface issue? How would you address it?
Well, a barbecue sounds good. And I don't mean to make light of it. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a home that you cherish that's beautiful and expensive, and in the backyard is a neighbor with their pigs. But that is part of Calaveras County right now. It's our rural environment. My mom owned a house in Moke Hill, and my children loved going over to Grandma's and feeding all the chickens. Now, we were fortunate. We were outside of town. She was on 2 acres. But it's part of what the reality is of Calaveras County. So what we need to do is come together and see if perhaps that neighborhood couldn't have a more updated ordinance, get all of the parties involved. I doubt that they have a pooper scooper for pigs the way they do for dogs, but certainly there'd have to be some sort of compromise involved. But again, it goes back to the very nature of where we live and why we live here. You know, we can't have it all ways. We can't say, I want to protect rural Calaveras County, I like living in the country, and then be upset because our neighbors have pigs, or horses, or chickens, or dogs. It all goes back to what is the ordinance for the area. If there are CC&Rs that specifically restrict having livestock, then maybe that's the time that you get the CC&Rs, you take them to the appropriate government agency, and start working through the channels. It's labor intensive, it isn't fun, you put the neighborhood against one another, but that would be the most effective way to deal with it.
Thank you. Ms. McCain.
There are such things that we call property rights, but our property rights end when we infringe on other property owners. I believe we do have ordinance on the books that would address this, but part of the problem is compliance. This is an animal control issue, and it should be dealt with through that agency. It doesn't sound like it's being dealt with. And I think these are some of the things that I was talking about earlier about ordinances. If there isn't an ordinance that adequately addresses this, then I think we should take a look at these kinds of things and address them with the proper ordinances. And then we need to actually enforce them. What an idea. We should actually enforce our laws, ordinances, policies, and rules. And that's part of what I think is one of the most important things, is to obey the law, follow the rules. And that way, everybody the public is taken care of, the public is protected. And this neighbor, if they are in compliance, which it doesn't sound like, they're protected also. Thank you.
going to try and stand up. One of the ladies in the back of the room asked me if we could stand up while we were talking. She had a hard time seeing and hearing us. I'm trying, but it won't move. So. You know, I was sitting here thinking while the other two candidates were answering the question that, you know, there are other laws too about disclosures when you purchase a piece of property. I don't know if it was a new construction that you moved in and then they moved in later with pigs, or if it was an actual thing that was there when you bought the house and it wasn't disclosed to you that there was a pig farm behind you. Those are some of the laws that you can look at. Also, I think I've been involved in my business in several times with what's called mediation. And I think what needs to be done here as a supervisor in that area is for the supervisor to go out and try and mediate that problem that's out there and see if you can't get both neighbors to come to an agreement on what the problem is there. Certainly the person that has the pigs has to be smelling it too, because I'm sure their home is pretty close to it also. I don't know if they're unaware of the problem or if they just ignore it, or you're butting heads with them and probably somebody else needs to come in and talk to them. Also, I don't know if you've called animal control and complained to them a number of times, or even the sheriff's department. Certainly this runs along the lines of some of the problems that I mentioned earlier in my homeowners association about septic tanks running down the line, down into other properties and so forth. And at that time what I actually had to be was actually a mediator between two properties, and then we had to call code enforcement out to solve the problem and get the septic tank fixed. So I think that's an area that you need to look at. Is call code enforcement, or call your supervisor and have him come out and be a mediator. I think that's part of the job. That's part of that full-time job. And see if you can't get it resolved that way. Thank you.
I'll start this question with Mrs. McDaniel. What is the solution to Trinitas and the DE effort?
Wow, that's a hot button issue. You may know that last year that the Board of Supervisors asked that there be a second EIR done on Trinitas. I believe in the CEQA process. CEQA is the California Environmental Equality Act. And what that act does is it provides alternatives. It will present alternatives, and it will present and make clear what the cumulative impacts will be on any project. I believe that the public has the right to participate and to comment on the discoveries and the definitions of what is found in the EIR, in the new EIR. This is a difficult thing to comment on at this point because I haven't read the new DEIR. It isn't out yet. And it will define all of those things I said, and it will also offer what the staff recommendations are. So I don't know how else to answer that other than we need to wait for the process, because I believe in the process.
The new EIR, it isn't out yet, and I think it needs to be, we need to see it before any solution can be done over there to resolve the situation. CEQA is a process where it has public participation in it, and it's also it is part of everybody that's involved down there. The reason for it is to get people involved that in any project of that size, their concerns about it and what effects it may have on them. So CEQA is a very important process, and the way it's enforced is through the public and the threat of litigation by the public for the counties or state to enforce the laws and for EIRs on any of those projects. I've been given some paperwork on it. The last time we had, last week when we had a candidates night, I hadn't seen any paperwork on any of it through the county, but since then some people came forward and given me some paperwork, and I'm in the midst of reading it. It's a very, very long set of documents that were given to me, and I haven't had a lot of time here lately. I spent 3 days at the powwow, and I was going door to door, so I haven't read a lot of it, but it's a very interesting piece of document that was given to me. But I think the EIR needs to come out first before any solutions we can even start to find any solutions for that area down there. Thank you.
Well, my answer tonight is the same as it was when they asked us that question down in Valley Springs last week. I'm always open to giving anybody the benefit of the doubt, but it very quickly became apparent that what had originally probably started out as just a private, just for friends and family golf course is no longer that. And he didn't follow the rules, and he didn't follow procedures. There's a lot of steps that have to go before enlarging to an 18-hole golf course. You check his webpage, you see it's a spa, and it's kind of obvious to me that what he was operating under was the old, well, it's easier to get forgiveness than approval. Well, that may be so, but in my belief, absolution is expensive. And you have to take into consideration all of the impact that this is going to bring on the neighbors. A golf course, to be successful, needs 40,000 rounds of golf a year to make a profit. That's an awful lot of traffic for that itty-bitty road. And if what he wants to do is install a professional golf course with 18 holes and a spa big enough to hold special events, as it shows on the webpage, then he needs to pay for the mitigations. He needs to pay for enlarging the road, improving them, making them far more user-friendly, not just for his traffic, but for all of his neighbors. He needs to pay to have a sewer system installed that will capture the water and then use it as gray water to water the golf courses. And he needs to pay for the sewer system itself and the water. You know, we're in another, it certainly looks to me like we're in probably another drought year, possibly a cycle. I don't want anybody being allowed to damage the aquifer at the expense of his neighbors or at the expense of our neighbors in San Joaquin County. If you want forgiveness instead of approval, well, that's your choice. But as I said, absolution's expensive.
Next question, we'll begin with Mr. Toffanelli. We got a great one here. Which of you would be the toughest on new residential developers? I'm not asking that question, it came from out here.
Which of us?
Which of you would be the toughest on new residential developers?
I think I would. I'm in construction, and I've been going door to door, and there's a lot of empty houses out there right now. I don't think at this point what we need is more houses being built. I don't think that's the solution. We have, like I said earlier, we have 38% of our workforce getting in their cars, driving to other counties right now to go to work. We're missing out on those payroll taxes as a county when we have a $2.3 million deficit projected for next year. There's no jobs here that can sustain the housing that was already been built. They have to go to other counties to work to be able to pay for it. A lot of them are leaving. A lot of them are moving out and leaving them empty, not because of foreclosure, but some of them are moving out not because of foreclosure, because of the high cost of gasoline and the money it costs to commute to those other areas, to the Bay Area, to Stockton, to Sacramento, to Modesto. So they're up and leaving, and there's Wallace Estates area, every other house I've seen when I walked through that area was empty. So I don't see a need right now to build more houses. I see a need to have businesses come here and put them, like I said earlier, on a fast-track permit process if they meet certain criteria, and get them here to support the people that live here. And then we can fill the houses that we already have built. Thank you.
Buzz, would you read that question again? Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure. I mean, I know the general gist of it, but I just want to hear the question.
Which of you would be the toughest on new residential developers?
Well, I would. And it's basically because that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years here in Calaveras County, is I've been working with the developers, working with the contractors. You know, when I started my banking career here, I worked for what was Central Sierra Bank. In those days, loan officers were expected to go out and house by house do our own inspections before we released the money to the contractor. Now, one of the things I've heard recently that really ticks me off is that we don't have quality construction in Calaveras County. Yes, we do, and we always have. We have contractors here who take great pride in their work. We have developers here who take great pride in their work. And I've walked through all those houses. Well, not all of them, but a good number of them, from Arnold all the way down to Valley Springs. So I understand the process. I think the subject of whether or not new developers are going to come in right now has pretty well been solved by the economy. None of the contractors that I've worked with in the last 10 years are building homes right now. The market isn't there. So we're going to have to wait until the economy actually turns around. As a lender, I'm very, very concerned about the exodus out of Valley Springs and areas like that, like Wallace and Burson, because when people bought those houses 5 to 10 years ago, gasoline was not at $4 a gallon. So the commutes become prohibitively expensive in a way they didn't expect. But right now, I think the economy's pretty well tanked, new construction in Calaveras County, unless it's already a custom home that somebody's going to pay cash for. I haven't heard of those very often anymore. But I know what contractors are doing. I've been through the houses, I know the process, and I know why they're frustrated right now, even in trying to do the little repair or improvements that they're trying to eke out to make a living. So I think I'd be tougher.
I think I have an advantage here coming last. I know I'll be tougher. The reason I know I'll be tougher is because of part of my core values. I keep telling you, I believe in obeying the laws, the rules, the ordinances, etc. There's a study out, and this isn't a recent study, but the last study that I read was that for every dollar that's brought in on a residential home, it costs $1.16 in services. Residential growth is not paying for itself. Kathy's right that the free market is not. The free market is going to dictate when homes are needed and when they're going to be sold. So I don't think we have a lot of worry right now, today, or tomorrow probably, whether or not we're going to be building new residential homes. But when those homes, I have full confidence that our economy will recover and that we will be looking at commercial development. I'm hoping that a lot of that development will be infill projects that will be within our current infrastructure until it can build out. But I feel very, very strongly about the fees that I was talking about, the fee structures and the ordinances that need to be in place. So our economy in Calaveras County that has to do with construction will be healthy, that will be taking care of our infrastructure. We've let that go. We're in a deep, deep hole. It didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. But we need to address this infrastructure through our fees, and that includes residential. Thank you.
Break the rules just for 1 second. I'd like to ask a question that relates to that. What can we really seriously do to bring decent paying jobs to our county? And you've touched on it, each of you touched it one time or another, but if you could summarize briefly, maybe that would help me understand better.
Where do you want to start?
Sorry about that. You can.
Okay. Well, I think we need to think outside the box. Certainly we need to be more user-friendly to the businesses that are here, but as far as bringing jobs into Calaveras County, we need to be forward-thinking. One of the things I'd like to see us explore, for example, is a solar energy plant. Now, possibly where the old cement plant used to be, or go and talk to some of the ranchers who have large acreage that they want to protect, but they could use an industry, a green industry, that needs employees, that creates power, that provides a revenue stream. You know, they're building a new one down in Southern California, and it's going to provide enough energy to power 145,000 homes. Now, we don't have quite that many here in Calaveras County yet. So let's take that solar energy plant and the employees there. Let's bring in a junior college, a community college, not just a satellite, but a whole community college for Calaveras County. Then you've got jobs, and you've got professional jobs. So now you've got ones that are on a higher pay scale, along with the startup jobs. There are any number of ideas that we can explore, so long as we're willing to think outside the box.
As I said before, this is a process that has to happen, and one of the first things that needs to happen is that our community plans and our general plan need to be completed so we know what we're supposed to do. We need to address the fee structures, the ordinances, so developers have clarity on what's expected of them and that the public is protected overall. Like I said, there's just a process that has to go, we have to move through, and something that I mentioned first may not be the first thing that needs to be addressed. But the land use element, we need to designate land use that will be designated for light industry or clean industry, if that's what the people choose that they want here. We need to recognize our assets. My gosh, if you think about what the assets are in Calaveras County, our agriculture, our recreation, our open space, our oak woodlands, our timberlands, my gosh, we even have our own national park, at least an entrance to it. But there are a lot of those natural assets, our unique communities that draw people, the events that we have in our county. Those are all part of that economic development piece. But all of those things I mentioned before address the infrastructure. And until the infrastructure, there's a way to address that, we're not going to have as quick economic development. And I want to just mention one way that I think that we need to address our infrastructure is we have so many small utility districts in our county. And they're so small that they can't qualify for funding for grants or loans. We need to find a way to have these districts communicate with each other, come up with a common vision so we can address the infrastructure of all of Calaveras County. There's not enough, each district doesn't have enough ratepayers that can afford the infrastructure upgrades. So we're going to have to look outside for these grants and loans that as a whole we can afford. And I think that's one place that we need to start looking. Thank you.
The question was, how do we address bringing businesses to Calaveras?
Not businesses, but jobs.
Jobs. Well, jobs are business. I believe that the county needs an enterprise zone, and here's the reason why. My company 16 years ago started in an enterprise zone in Stockton. An enterprise zone is a state-funded zone that brings tax relief to companies that employ people from within that community, not from outside the community. They draw a circle around, a certain size circle around that enterprise zone and say, if you can employ 5 people, 4 people, 6 people within this community, within this circle, then we'll give you tax benefits, we'll give you payroll benefits through the state. I think you need to be able to have some type of incentive for a company to come here. It's no different than somebody out there, you as a retail buyer out there, that you're going to go look for sales. Those commercial establishments are selling themselves. They're selling something to you. We need to be able to sell the county to prospective businesses for them to come here. And you have to have something to sell. An enterprise zone and tax incentives are one of the ways that you entice businesses to come here. It needs to be done. This county has not sold itself, and it's losing out. Smaller counties surrounding us have plenty of jobs. The statistics that were supplied by the chamber say that 12 to 15% of their commuters leave their county to find jobs outside their county versus California, I said earlier, is 38%. We have to be business friendly. We have to, again, like I say, an economic development board or an agency that can put these businesses on fast track permits. Get them in here. They're going to put people to work, 50, 60 jobs. Those are the type of businesses that are going to be able to sustain the communities and the tax base that we need here to provide public safety to everybody in the fashion that we all expect it to be. Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with Ms. Newman. Actually, there's 2 questions here that are very similar, I think. When, if ever, will we have any stores such as Walmart, Kmart, shoe stores, etc. in San Andreas? And the other one was, do you feel big box stores are the answer to everything?
I know that big box stores are popular, and I don't know what people mean by big box, if you're talking about Walmart, or if you're talking about a Sears, a Penny's, a Mervyn's, that kind of a Staples. I think that the free market will determine that kind of thing, but I really doubt we'll ever see a Walmart in San Andreas, especially, even in Angels Camp. You know, Angels Camp is one of the fastest growing areas, and they have, I go back to fees again, they have higher fees than Calaveras County. Mr. Tofanelli talked about a free enterprise zone. I'm not sure we could offer more of a free enterprise zone than we've had with the low fees or no fees or no ordinances that we've had so far, but we still haven't had that growth. I forgot the question.
It's 2 questions, and one says, when are we going to have a Walmart, Kmart, etc. in San Andreas? The other one is, what do you think big box stores are everything?
I think one of the problems, and this addresses our tax base too, because like Mr. Tofanelli said, that we're losing so much of our tax base to other counties, adjoining counties, because we don't have those goods and services available here in Calaveras County. I think we need stores that will bring those goods and services to our communities, so that tax base is gone. And so we can. I have a business, so I have a personal interest in this. If there were more businesses like that, maybe they would come to my business too and spend their money. But I think if a Walmart came to Calaveras County and wanted to be here, I think we need to think this through very, very carefully. Because as I said before, if we recognize what our assets are, and that is our authentic Gold Rush history, our small town feel, and these are all things that bring tourists to us, I think we have to be very careful when we make these long-range decisions for an instant gratification of saving a few pennies when we go shopping, or earning a few tax dollars. I think we have to look at the big picture, visioning ahead again. about what the unintended consequences may be. Are you going to bring in let's say, Walmart at the expense of driving every other small business that really brings character to our individual towns? I don't know the answer to this ultimately, but I think that valuing our assets and really keeping those things in mind when we make those long-term decisions are very important, because it may change the whole quality of life of why most of us live here, why we move here, and why people visit here. And tourism is a big part of our economic base. So I think we need to really think that through.
Do I think big box stores is the answer? No, I don't. Will a big box store ever be built in San Andreas? My answer to that is, will a big box store ever come to Calaveras County? Next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Probably someday a big box store will be in Calaveras County. Whether it be in our lifetime or not, I can't answer you that. But I do know that there could be an injustice here as far as what's going on and what I've heard talk about, and I'm sure all of us have heard. Angels Camp had been in negotiations or have been trying to entice big box stores over there. Whether it be a Walmart, whether it be a Costco, whatever it may be. You need to understand that Angels Camp is an incorporated city. It's the only incorporated city in this county. They were proposing about putting it at the junction of 49 and 4 there, which is within their city limits, and there's infrastructure there. If that big box store, or any big box store, even a Target goes in over there, and it goes inside their city limits, then the 3,500 people that live there would benefit from it, because the sales tax dollars would be going to that incorporated city and not the county. The county would receive 1/4% of all the sales, unless there's a profit-sharing agreement with that city through the county. And I don't think that's the right way to go. I think if it's going to be one in the county initially, then the whole county needs to benefit from it, because all of our roads leading to it will be county roads that we pay for, all of us. I think it needs to be put at least a mile outside the city limits of Angels Camp, if it even goes there. I think a big box store, these are top 500 Fortune top businesses, and a mile of infrastructure, or 2 miles of infrastructure, would certainly be within their scope of paying for, and then we all benefit from it because we have a mile or two of infrastructure in place that we all know, and there's a big talk here, that we don't have any infrastructure. Thank you.
Do I think big box stores are the answer? No, but we have to do something. And again, it goes back to, let's think outside the box. Now, for certain, you've got to have the infrastructure, that's a given. But let's think about something creative. Let's think about the industrial zone that's out at Toyon, and think about perhaps going to contractors, going to developers, going to store owners for an outlet mall. Think of it. It's not something that's going to compete with the small businesses here in Calaveras County, but it's going to bring not only services and goods that we need here. The buses come here. They spend their money at outlet malls and then they go home. The closest outlet mall is Tracy or Folsom. At $4 a gallon, that gets pretty pricey to go shopping. But if we had something like an outlet mall outside of town, you're not going to fit it within the structure of San Andreas or even in Angels Camp. You're certainly not going to fit it down in Oak Hill. The topography won't allow it. And I'm not too sure, given the current layout of the highways, that we could incorporate it in the area between Valley Springs and Wallace, or Valley Springs and Burson. But if you think of that large industrial site, can you imagine if we took the water tower? We've got the outlet mall there. We've got a couple of fast food restaurants. So we've got McDonald's, but it's out of town. It's accessible for the high school kids on their way home. But just imagine the water tower, all decorated, painted, saying, come shop in Calaveras County. Leave your tax dollars here. We love you. And go home.
Here's a few other questions here. Some of the questions were very specific, and I know the candidates will stay around afterwards, and you can ask those of them individually. And I had a couple. Nobody out here brought up higher sales taxes or higher TOT, bed tax stuff on motels. I'd like to. I'll catch up with you afterwards, just like everybody else. I'll be fair on that. But I was surprised nobody asked that question. Let's go to a 3-minute. Conclusion from each of you, and it is Mr. Toffanelli.
3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
I think I've been very forward in what my thoughts are for this position as superintendent. I mentioned that I would be a full-time supervisor. I will relinquish my position at my company. I planned to retire originally when I was 55. That was part of my plan. I'm 54 now. I'll turn 55 in November. So it's always been part of my plan to retire out of that business and look for other things to pique my interest. This job here, when I was as foreman last year in the grand jury, and I spent 4 years in this decade on the grand jury here in Calaveras County. Last year I was foreperson there. So I'm very familiar with all the departments and all the things that are going on within the government right now, and I've investigated a lot of it. And during that time, it piqued my interest to run for this position if the incumbent was going to step down. Bill Claudino made that decision in February, or early part of March, and that's when I made my decision to seek this position in Calaveras County. I think my expertise in business area, my expertise in construction, and my expertise in the background as a grand juror investigating this exact government that I would be stepping into, along with my interaction with my residents in the Valley Hills Estates Homeowners Association, dealing with some of the projects, some of the things that I came up today with the pig situation. I am a very strong candidate, and I can and will do this job to the best of my ability. I've taken my company over 16 years to a position that started with no infrastructure, and the business needs infrastructure. When you initially start a business, you don't have any clients, you don't have a workforce that's settled in and long-term employees, you don't have any clients, and you certainly can't find anybody to lend you money. So you don't have a real infrastructure when you first start up a company like I did. And I was able to now have all of that infrastructure to the point where daily we get bombarded with applications for credit cards and application for loans and such that, we're in such good shape that we don't need to take advantage of it. But the infrastructure is there, and I believe that I can help this county maintain its mission in providing infrastructure that's desperately needed here. I think I have the expertise on how to do it. Thank you.
Well, I believe that one of the most important questions any candidate should be prepared to answer is why. Why do I believe that I'm qualified not only to ask for your vote, but to ask for your trust? Your trust while we make some of the most far-reaching decisions that have ever faced Calaveras County. Well, part of my answer lies in the background that I alluded to before. I was born and raised in Calaveras County. I graduated from Calaveras High School in 1971, and then I left to attend college. I've lived throughout the Central Valley, the Bay Area, Arizona, and Orange County before returning to Calaveras in the summer of '97. I've lived in those areas of unbridled growth, and I've lived in those that were micromanaged, neither one of which is what I would recommend for Calaveras County. But it gave me a knowledge base, because I've lived with other concepts, ideas. Some we might want to explore, some we may want to avoid. So I have a knowledge base. I have a skill set that I believe is very much needed on the Board of Supervisors right now. I've been in banking since 1978, and I've been a community banker here in Calaveras County for almost 10 years. I've worked with the contractors, the developers, the engineers, the architects, and the people who just want to build a home or own a business. I understand the process, I understand the frustrations, and I've got very specific ideas, as you might have guessed by now, on how we might best answer some of those challenges and frustrations. Most importantly is my commitment to this county. Along with raising 2 daughters and building a career, I've worked side by side with any number of people from one end of the county to the other as a volunteer. I've listened to them, and I'm bringing all of their wisdom and all of their hopes and dreams for what Calaveras County should be to my candidacy. They're our greatest asset. We can build an infrastructure. We can make what Calaveras County wants to be. And why? Because we've got the asset base in our people. The citizens of Calaveras County routinely raise between $1 to $2 million a year for nonprofits. And that's a county of 45,000 people. We've got the greatest asset in our community. And I believe that with my knowledge base and my skill set and my willingness to be open and accessible and listening to the citizens of Calaveras County, that I'll be a very good supervisor and I'll be able to live up to the trust that I'm asking you for in June.
I have great respect for both of my opponents. I think they've put forth a great candidacy. I say this humbly, but I say it with vigor, that I believe that I am the best qualified person for this job. I believe I come with the most relevant experience to do this job. As I said before, I've been in the trenches with the people. I am the public. I've been working to bring our community plan in San Andreas to fruition, and with the Valley Springs community to do the same. I have deep, solid roots in both San Andreas and Valley Springs because of my businesses and because of my experience on the school board. We have 7 of our schools in District 1. I believe that my commitment to transparency is a valuable tool to bring. I've spent an innumerable amount of time trying to build relationships with people in this community and with agencies in this community. So there is a trust there, so they will tell the truth, so I can have a working relationship with not only the citizens, but with the agencies. I've had the opportunity to speak with department heads and elected officials at the county level to do that same thing, to build those relationships, and I would continue to spend time in their offices to understand what the needs are of Calaveras County. I'm almost a local. I've been here for 48 years. I graduated from Calaveras High School also. And I love this county. I think a supervisor needs to care about the whole county, because when we're voting on not just District 1, but we're voting on 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we need to understand, I'm a hard worker, I have a strong work ethic, and I love a challenge. And I'm looking forward to jumping in the trenches again in this new position and working hard for the people of Calaveras County and District 1. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to the folks from the Chamber of Commerce who helped put this on tonight, Diane Gray, Jack Murphy, high school band, provide the refreshments here tonight. We really want to say thank you to the candidates. It's just amazing the courage it must take to do what you're doing. Put yourself out there and ask people for votes and really let your heart show. And it did. I have the greatest amount of respect for you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks to the Enterprise.